What are you doing? I'll tell you what you're doing. You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Either you are, or I'll be skipping rope with your entrails. Ta-ta.
This podcast is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Robots Radio. Games. Lore. Stories. Community. Just press play. Welcome to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, the podcast where we explore the amazing universe of the Elder Scrolls.
You approach the Shivering Isles. Through the door behind me lies the realm of Sheogorath, Prince of Madness, Lord of the Never There.
A new arrival! A shame about my gatekeeper. I'm so happy I could just tear out your intestines and strangle you with them.
Adventurers, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I'm here with Lotus of Doom, my regular pal companion on our adventures through the Daedric Princes lately. Lotus,
it's true.
How's it going, man?
It's going pretty well. Going to tackle some Sheogorath, which we may or may not have one or two clips just naturally from.
There's a few. And we also, of course, we have some that were custom made for us by Wes Johnson, which was so nice of him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Sheogorath is the topic today. We're almost to the end of the Daedric Princes. We've almost made our way back through everybody, updating everything about what we know about them and kind of expanding on the knowledge from the first time around. And This time we're up to Sheogorath again. And I think Sheogorath the last few have been kind of lesser known Daedric Princes. Sheogorath's almost the most popular one. I mean, he's probably up there in top three.
The most popular and one of the most fleshed out in the series.
Yeah. Well, he has an entire expansion about him. He's got he shows up in every major game from Daggerfall on. Mm-hmm. There's some significant content in Elder Scrolls Online, and he's insane, and that's just fun.
Yes, but
terrifying,
literally.
Yeah, literally. So Sheogorath, known as the Daedric Prince of Madness, the fourth corner in the House of Troubles. We've talked about the House of Troubles before a little bit. The Skooma Cat, which is always fun when he shows up as a cute little kitty cat, because anytime that the thing about Sheogorath is sometimes he just seems charming and fun, but yet he's frightening. He's a horror show at the same time. So to put something as powerful and as chaotic as he is in the body of a cute little cat is just a wonderful irony, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's weird, kind of, as you mentioned that, is there's Sheogorath, as we've, kind of mentioned with the Jiggalag episode, is there's a duality to Sheogorath other than just the fact that there's like he was ripped asunder and became two different Daedric Princes essentially. But there's the jovial, jokey, hey, cheese and memes and all these ridiculous quotes mixed in with a level of like legitimately kind of scary, because the concept of losing your mind is like really unsettling, because that's how you process and losing
it's part of yourself. It's a core component of who you are. Like if your mind is not there's not much else left.
Correct. And the thing is, without getting like overly serious, mental illness is a serious thing that, people need to take care of their mental well-being. And it's funny that this, not like funny, haha, but funny, like awkward, that this Daedric Prince really kind of shows the goofy side of like, oh, that's insane, as if like it's a quote, and it's like, oh, okay.
Absurdity. This is something I was thinking about.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, absurdity.
Prepping for the show today, one of the things I was thinking about is that Sheogorath is so fun
Yes.
Because he is often like squarely in the realm of the absurd and absurdist art and humor. I mean, everything you could trace this all the way back to Monty Python, and like that's a type of humor that's very popular. And,
absolutely.
And we grasp onto this idea of like you put these two things next to each other, and they're not supposed to be next to each other. It's absurd.
It's like, oh, how loony, ha ha ha. But then you also have the inability to, predict things, which sounds kind of strange, but complete randomness and unpredictability when it comes to something of great power like a Daedric Prince in the series is absolutely terrifying. When it's just like, oh, haha, jokey, actually, you know what? And he just, for no reason other than just on a whim, completely tears you apart and turns your organs into a loot. It's like, okay, how do you predict something like it becomes so unpredictable? It causes a paranoia, which then devolves into mental instability, and you've got all these other things, and it's like it's a self-perpetuating cycle of him being so whacked out. It causes a ripple effect.
Yeah, well, like a lot of this stuff, I've got a theory here. I've got a theory. Let's finish all the titles real quick, and I'll jump into my theory.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got quite a few.
Skooma Cat, Lord of the Never There, Raver, Comforter of Men. There are times where he's been helpful to people, and so he gets those kinds of titles. Sovereign of the Shivering Isles, that's his realm of Oblivion. And so here, go with me here on a little journey. If the Daedric Princes are, if an analogy would be something like a Daedric Prince is like a human compared to an ant, and the mortals on Tamriel are like ants, right?
Yep.
So because they're at a scale of power that is similarly distant between those two, right?
Like
right, like a lot of ants could take down a grown person, but it would have to be a lot of them have to be stuck in a situation where they can't get out of, right?
Yeah. It's a weird situation that you would be able to overwhelm something of such immense size comparatively.
Right, and not just size, but intelligence and intent. The things that we do on a daily basis as human beings will never make sense to an ant, because an ant is programmed to collect food, to burrow, to build its home, to protect its little group. And to reproduce. Like there are certain things that ants do, and that is the full extent of who they are.
Correct. If you give an ant a trigonometry puzzle, it's going to just continue walking away to look for food because it literally won't comprehend that. Right.
Or if you discuss mental awareness and health, and any of these higher concepts are well above the scale of an ant. So the same thing applies to when it comes to these like intergalactic powers in a way. I mean, they're not intergalactic so much as they are interplanetary. I mean, they're just on a completely different level. So, and we've talked about this before with the Daedric Princes, this idea that like we can't fathom their intentionality because they are at such a level beyond us. So they are frightening and they are powerful. And we will never quite understand them. There's something other. Even the lesser Daedra are still something other than us, and we can't really fathom them. I think Sheogorath takes that to the full extent of that. Like on one level, sure, maybe he's just mad. He's just the antithesis of Jiggalag. There is no order to any of it. But even if there was, we still would not be able to make sense of it. And the fact that he is so powerful, that he can show up on a whim and turn you inside out with the snap of his fingers, makes that, like you were saying, absolutely terrifying.
Yes, because there's just when you have that much unpredictability matched with that much power, it's just like a constant state of unrest. Like there's no situation where you can ever be comfortable. Like because who knows? Like what you were doing 1 minute to please Sheogorath could just be all of a sudden it's like, well, no, I hate that.
Sure.
I hate that. Sure. Cheese is the worst. All of a sudden it's like, oh my God, no, not cheese. And then it just like destroys you.
Well, here's another idea I had. So we take the story with him being Jiggalag originally and order and all of that. And the rest of the Daedric Princes all had to team up in order to take him down a peg. In order to reduce the amount of order, they turned him into something that was the antithesis of that, madness. That still doesn't mean that he's any less powerful than he was when he was Jiggalag. He is still of the same order of magnitude. And we know that the Daedric Princes aren't all on the same level. So Sheogorath is still extremely powerful. At least it would make sense to me that he's still very, very powerful. And we can see this in the stories where he outwits the other Daedric princes because it's fun. He pits himself against the other princes, like the story with Hircine and the monster that Hircine summons, and he summons the little bird, right?
Like where Daedroth,
right.
It, he uses a canary to convince it to tear itself apart, to just screw with Hircine.
Right. And so that's just one little example of a situation that shows that he's operating on a different level than many of the other Daedric princes. And I feel like he always was. Jiggalag wouldn't have become so powerful and so threatening to them unless he was actually a threat to them, unless he had the ability to do things that they disagreed with, and they couldn't stand against it unless they all banded together, right? So the thing that makes Sheogorath at least palatable to the other Daedric princes is that he doesn't have any real intentions of conquering them. He just kind of wants to put them in their place every so often and make them into an idiot.
Right. And to that end, a lot of times when there's an appropriate book, I try to make reference to it. This one I'll just kind of throw out now because there's a lot of them. And it's like the 16 Accords of Madness. There's a lot of really good stories that kind of highlight that. And we've gone over a couple, so I don't really know that we should. I definitely recommend looking up the full book as opposed to us just reading all the different stories to you, because there's several different ones. And they're different aspects of either him, or oftentimes screwing, like to your point, screwing with other Daedric princes just for the sake of screwing with them.
Mm-hmm.
And
which many of them wouldn't even dare to do unless they were very intentionally planned or coordinated with other Daedric princes. Like you do not tread on another Daedric prince's realm because that is war. And yet Sheogorath gets away with it all the time.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm bored, I need something to do on a Tuesday. It's like, it's Stardust time. Time to screw with Molag Bal or something like that. It's just like, but yeah, the thing about that is, like, again, there's so much unpredictability with that, which provides both levity and humor, and also a really disturbing view of when you don't really, not that, morals often apply to the Daedric princes type of thing, but when it comes to Sheogorath, it's really like there's a level of just, there are no rules, and whatever Sheogorath currently wants to do is totally just in play. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a weird dichotomy with the like very jovial haha version that a lot of people focus on. Mostly the series Elder Scrolls Online does a lot with the jokey version, right? Whereas the card game Elder Scrolls Legends focuses much, much more on the darker version of the sides of madness. It's definitely both sides of the situation.
Awesome. And thank you to King Quintian. Quinlan?
I think it's Quinlan.
Quinlan, yeah. On the text, it's kind of small on the little screen on the side. Thank you for the raid. But here's another concept here, is this idea that there is inherently power in unpredictability itself. And we see this in other characters. And in fact, we've seen this in a lot of characters in literature and other kinds of stories lately. Here, we'll just, first of all, obviously there are some connections interliterarily between Sheogorath and a character like the Joker in the Batman series, right? Sure. That unpredictability, the madness of it. But what
Very much with the newer Joker too, I found. They definitely seem to have a very similar vibe to... There's like this extreme unpredictability, which is so hard to deal with when you have no rules for how the other person is playing.
Right. You can't anticipate what they're going to do next because you don't even understand what game they're playing, what their goals are at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so this crosses over to other characters as well. So, for example, in the MCU, we have a character like Loki. And of course, Loki and Thor have been in the comics for decades, but in the shows, in the movies, the character of Loki is particularly threatening at times because you can't always pin him down. You can't, like, and especially to Thor. Thor doesn't understand his brother at all in order to like anticipate anything he's going to do. So he always gets one over on him. But what about this? Game of Thrones series, the new one, the House of the Dragon, you have Daemon Targaryen.
Yeah,
in that
for a Daemon. Yep.
Who I don't know if you guys have been watching this, but he's got the same vibe. He's got that same level of like unpredictability. You don't really know what his game is. He's just as likely to give you a hug and say, you know, it's good to be here. I'm here to support you, as he is to just turn the tables in the middle of the wedding or whatever, right? Like there's something inherent in unpredictability, and there's a power in that. And Sheogorath has that in spades because he himself appears to be mad. It appears like he has no goal other than simply whatever his whim happens to be in the moment.
Right. And there's actually there's a few stories. I actually think this is one of the excerpts from the Accords of Madness, but I don't have it directly in front of me, so anybody can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But there is at least one of the stories where the idea is they're trying to he's trying to get this wizard to like go crazy, and he gets a soul if that's the case. So the wizard's like all prepped. I mean, there's a few different situations of this story kind of taking place because he does this with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And like the wizard is so concerned about trying to like be on guard for everything that basically the mage drives himself crazy because he's just like, oh my God, the flowers, he's hiding in the flowers. He's going to do this. He's going to do this. Sheogorath just doesn't do anything instead.
Yeah, right.
Goes off and does something else.
Right.
And the mage just makes himself insane. He doesn't even do anything.
Yeah. And it's just in his nature to do the very thing that is the least predictable in the moment.
Yep.
And there is power in that. So, we could go into like all the different religions and cultures and things like that. And I feel like these are things that we probably need to come back to in the future. You know, there's the Khajiit, there's the Kindmer and the Dummer being the house of the fourth corner of the House of Troubles. And you can see why he would be lumped in with the bad Daedra in that group, because he wasn't helping them out, and he's also extremely unpredictable. But I think what is most interesting about Sheogorath is the fact that we've had so much involvement with him in the games. He shows up in Daggerfall. He shows up in Morrowind. He gives you some side quests and things. But then there's the Shivering Isles expansion to Oblivion. And in the Shivering Isles expansion, go play it. If you haven't played it, go back and play it. And Bethesda, if you're listening to this, please do a remake of Oblivion. That would be amazing. That would be amazing if you could just make it work better on our systems again and maybe up-res the graphics a little bit. I'd love to play through it again. Yes.
We've got enough Skyrim versions. Give us an Oblivion or a Morrowind or something.
Yeah, any of those would be great. Also, did you see the NVIDIA presentation about the new graphics cards and then the app that allows you to up-res and add ray tracing lighting, and they used Morrowind as an example?
Yes, I did see that.
That was amazing. Yeah, and I know they're working on Skywind and Oblivion, but those projects have been going for a decade now, and it's like it feels like we're never going to get them, you know. But hopefully we will. Fingers crossed. Hopefully we will. But here's my point. My point is, in the Shivering Isles expansion, you play through the storyline, and at the culmination of it, you, the hero of Kvatch, the main character of the Oblivion, mantles Sheogorath. You stop the whole end of the age thing. You stop the return of Jiggalag. Sheogorath comes back, but you now take his seat, which means, unless there's a hole in the lore somewhere that gets filled with some other information, by the events of Skyrim, that Sheogorath is the hero of Kvatch. As far as I know.
Yeah, I was going to say that theory is something I've always ascribed to as well. It's really, they just have not given anything to contradict that. So I've just that seems like the case.
Right. And in Skyrim, you get kind of one main quest line that he takes you through, and there's a person who's going nuts, and you have to deal with
Pelagius.
Pelagius, and you have to deal with that, and you have to like help out his brain and whatever. So you get a little bit of that. And then you also get Sheogorath in the Elder Scrolls Online. And of course, that is the second age of the world, second era. And it's a very different take on Sheogorath in some ways, but still kind of the same. We get a little bit more of the humorous side, and it's not as threatening in a lot of cases, but there's still some wackiness that ensues. So, do you have like a favorite encounter, Lotus, with Sheogorath across all of these things? Because he shows up a lot.
Yes, and I always, so I like Sheogorath. I enjoy the really kind of darker aspects of Sheogorath more because it's very unsettling. Like it's a very uncomfortable like thing when he portrays himself as like the not happy-go-lucky, jovial, haha, I'm crazy, but like the actual like, ooh, this is like mental illness type of disturbing. I'm like, and he gets like really like he'll change the pitch of his voice. His accent will even change, which I believe Wes Johnson even specifically said on the episode with him that he was like, when he gets serious, he's like, I literally shift how I'm speaking. And I'm like, that
it goes totally from a Scottish to an Irish accent, depending on if he's manic or if he's more calm.
Right. Yeah. And the thing that I always, because from a gameplay perspective, I kind of min-max to the extreme. I love just becoming an overpowered monster and just like running amok. And I remember when I was playing through the Shivering Isles expansion in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, he was, giving me a speech or whatever while sitting on his throne. And I'm so used to just like wrecking house in these games once I really get into them. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'll do what I want. And I slug Sheogorath, and his response, which I was just like, that is the best Easter egg like ever. He's like, you really shouldn't have done that. And the screen goes black and the screen fades back in and there's just clouds around me and I'm hurtling toward the ground. And I'm like,
he just teleports you in the air and you're just falling.
And you fall an incredibly long way. I was borderline invincible by the time that I had found like a way to level up infinitely in Oblivion and everything like that. So I had like, I don't know, a few 100,000 hit points, I believe. And I was just hurtling toward Earth. I was like, I don't know if I can even survive this. Yeah. And you land on what's called the Hill of Suicides, which it's a literal hill in the Shivering Isles. There are just bones everywhere. And my character hits the ground, and in the old Havoc engine ragdoll physics of Oblivion, my character bounces back in the air off all these bones and is just like casually rolling down the hill like a total putz. Awesome. And I'm dead. I'm like,
that's awesome.
Well, touche, Sheogorath.
All right. You know that gravity will get the best of me.
Yeah. So like that to me was just such a small touch. Again, how many people are going to ever even find that? Like, why would you just smack Sheogorath to begin with? Like in the middle of a speech. I just loved the fact that it was just like that little extra flip. It's like, nah, that's not going to work here. And it's just like, boom, dead no matter what level you are. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that always sticks with me. That was just such a funny little Easter egg that was not what I was expecting. I figured if anything, he'd be like, knock it off, or he'll like freeze me in place or something like that. I was like,
right. Or threatens you with some sort of really funny line about your
right. And it was just nope, super serious. Like, you shouldn't have done that. And it's just like, oh, you're in the clouds and you're dead.
Yes. That's
like,
great.
Okay.
That's great. Well, we've got some patrons to thank. We got to take the mid break, but we've got a bunch of different items. We'll try to get through the items pretty quickly. We've got, my favorite's the Wabbajack, which is great. And I want to relay the story of the Wabbajack as well when we get back. So don't go anywhere. We've got all sorts of cool stuff. We'll be right back.
This is Hamis Morak, Dragonborn, and you are educating yourself to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show. This is where we get to thank our patrons. We've got a bunch of new patrons who signed up in the last week. We have Ned L, Jacob S, Logan B, Lars A, Jonathan W. and Dylan A. Thank you so much for everybody who has signed up, and welcome aboard. And Dylan has signed up as a tier 5 patron, so you get a shout out every week now. So here's your big shout out for the first time as a new tier 5 patron. Thank you for signing up, Dylan A. And
Tinky's up.
Yeah. And then we also have Kira C and Noodle Al Dente, who are our tier 5 Daedric Princes. If you're interested in checking out what you can get for helping to support the show, go to patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Check out all the different tiers. And if you want to join us at the end of the month, which is coming up in just a week from today, this is Thursday night when we record these live at twitch.tv/robotsradio. And in a week, we'll be discussing whatever the community decides. And we haven't pinned down a topic yet. So jump into the Discord. If you do have a Patreon account with us, if you are supporting the show, make sure you connect your Patreon account to the Discord account so that you get the right roles, so that you can see all the channels, and let us know what you want to discuss, because we're open to whatever you guys suggest in order to plan out what we're going to talk about next week. So send us your thoughts, and thank you to all 112 of our supporters. You guys are amazing. Thank you so very much. Also, if you want to help us out with a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify, that would be wonderful. We don't have any new ones to read out, but if you leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, even if you don't listen to it on the platform, you just have to have an account to log in, we'll read your words on a future episode of the show. So thank you to everybody for all of your support. We couldn't do the show without you. You guys are the best.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
All right, we're back. And so Lotus, we've got a bunch of different items to go through. Let's see. Can we start with the Wabbajack? Might
as well start with the Wabbajack. It's probably the most iconic of all of Sheogorath. It's wacky instruments.
It's the staff that has the head on it that looks like these yawning mouths, big old heads with like really long open mouths.
It looks on the top, very similar to the gateway to the Shivering Isles as well, that forms as the entranceway. So
I think it's almost like it's a face of madness, right? It's like, like that's kind of what it's representing. And being that this is basically a staff of madness, you pointed at a thing and it turns it into another thing, seemingly at random, and can be very effective at either reducing your enemy into a bunny rabbit or turning something into a terrible monster that's going to eat you
something
alive.
Substantially worse than what you were dealing with before. Don't use it on like a housefly or something like that.
Right. So there is the book called Wabbajack, and this originally is in Daggerfall. This is a story that goes all the way back to Daggerfall, and I want to take a moment and read through this, because it's just so fun. So this is called Wabbajack, story of one man's summoning of Sheogorath and descent into madness. Little boys shouldn't summon up the forces of eternal darkness unless they have an adult supervising. I know, but on that sunny night of the 5th of first seed, I didn't want an adult. I wanted Hermaeus Mora, the Daedra of knowledge, learning gums, GUMS, and varnishes. This is written by a child, by the way. You see, I was told by a beautiful large-breasted man. I've never called somebody a large-breasted man, but I think I might start doing that. Hey, you got some big muscles, you large-breasted man. Who lived under the library in my hometown, that the 5th of first seed was Hermaeus Mora's night, and if I wanted the Ogma Infinium, the Book of Knowledge, I had to summon him. When you're the king, the new King of Solitude, every bit of knowledge helps. This is the story of the King of Solitude when he was a child. Normally, you need a witch's coven or a mage's guild, or at least matching pillowcase and sheets to invoke a Prince of Oblivion. The man under the library showed me how to do it myself. He told me to wait until the storm was at its height before shaving the cat. I've forgotten the rest of the ceremony. It doesn't matter. The way the story is basically watching a descent into madness is wonderful. Yeah. Someone appeared who I thought was Hermaeus Mora. The only thing that made me somewhat suspicious was Hermaeus Mora, from what I read, was a big blobby multi-eyed clawed monstrosity, and this guy looked like a waistcoated banker. Also, he kept calling himself Sheogorath, not Hermaeus Mora. Still, I was so happy to have summoned Hermaeus Mora. These inconsistencies did not bother me. He had me do some things.
That's my favorite part about this.
It's just like, well, you're clearly not Sheogorath. You're Hermaeus Mora.
Quiet down, Hermaeus Mora.
He had me do some things that didn't make any sense to me, beyond the mortal scope, breadth, and ken, I suppose. And then his servant happily gave me something he called the Wabbajack. Wabbajack, Wabbajack. Wabbajack, 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 Wabbajack. Maybe the Wabbajack is the book of knowledge. Maybe I'm smarter because I know cats can be bats, can be rats, can be hats, can be gnats, can be that's and this is. And that doors can be bores, can be snores, can be floors, can be roars, can be spores, can be yours and can be mine. I must be smart, for the interconnective system is very clear to me. Then why or wherefore do people keep calling me mad? Wabbajack, Wabbajack, Wabbajack. I love this book. This is great.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we don't need to go too much longer onto the Wabbajack. And, you know, the Wabbajack, it is that item. Most of you guys have played with this. It shows up in Skyrim. Like, yeah, everybody's familiar with the Wabbajack. What do we want to tackle next? I know this is kind of, there's a lot, so maybe we can try to burn through some of these.
Some of them aren't really super that important. There's the Staff of Sheogorath, which basically is... It's essentially just Sheogorath's staff. And if you plan on mantling Sheogorath, you're gonna basically get this. It's weird. It almost seems like just the distinguishing thing of like, well, if you have this, classify as Sheogorath because it's always in his possession.
This is the item that defines who Sheogorath is, and although you don't always see him holding it, it's magically in his possession, right?
Yeah, it's like implied that he still owns it, I guess.
Right. Or like so many of these Daedric Princes, it's almost like they don't physically have to have the item visible on them for it to still be part of them.
Keeps it in his banker's waistcoat.
He puts it in his Staff of Sheogorath pocket. Whatever that is. Yeah, but that's basically the details on that one, I think, right?
Yeah. The other one that I want to talk about specifically is the Staff of Everscamp.
This one's great.
Yeah, which the Staff of Everscamp is a Daedric staff adorned with metallic scamps on the tip of it, and it's inscribed with Daedric lettering, spelling.
Yeah, full scamps, like full modeled, scamps.
Full up scamps.
Yeah,
and the word nonsense is actually inscribed on the staff, which is amazing out the gate. It's a recurring artifact that is primarily associated with Sheogorath, though there is evidence that Namira has a connection to it as well. I never really... There's very little elaborated on that, and I've never really understood why that's the case specifically, even though that was a note. But the thing about the Staff of Everscamp, which is just...
Yeah, we talked about this previously, so you can go back and listen to that episode as well.
We did.
Yeah.
And it's just like having a staff that just griefs you in real life, like that is such a video game tropey thing.
Right.
That a staff just spawns scamps that...
And they do what they want.
Die, and they just run amok.
Yeah, they just do what they want. They're not like anytime you summon anything else, for the most part, it's there to help you. These are just random scamps that just do what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, it's a weird reference, but if anybody's ever seen the show Rick and Morty, it makes me think of the Mr. Meeseeks with scamps, right? Where it's just like they keep popping up, and then it's like, what the hell do you do with all these damn scamps? They're just running amok. They're just like, and I don't even pay, like, some of the scamps in some of the games are a little more aggressive. Like they're actually like, oh, this is like a horrible little creature you need to fight back. And all I picture is, to anybody who might have seen my playthrough of it on YouTube, but you can just look up the Battle Spire scamp, and that is all I picture with these things. They're these really high-pitched things that make really, really inappropriate comments to you a lot in game. That's all I picture with these scamps, and making the Morrowind sound where it's just like every time. And it's just like, that's all I picture with these little things.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun one. If you want to go back in Oblivion and go find it, I'm sure there's a wiki that explains exactly where to get it and all that stuff. But go play with it. It's a good one. There are a lot of items that are just kind of these objects that were added to ESO or whatever because Sheogorath is so popular from like a meta perspective. There is the Fork of Horpellation.
That's another really good one.
Yeah, so this shows up regularly, like as an item on the store for ESO. Like, I think people must buy this a lot.
A dagger type of thing.
Yeah, you run around poking people with this thing.
It's such horripilation is a ridiculous word. Mm-hmm. But the Fork of Horpellation is a cursed artifact from Sheogorath, and he refers to it as Forky pretty frequently throughout the games. It's basically an iron fork. It's what it is.
Horpellation, for anybody who doesn't know what horpellation means, it means when the hairs stand up on your skin out of fear or excitement. So like Will Byers in Stranger Things, when one of the monsters shows up, is experiencing horpellation.
Horpellation, which is just such a bizarre descriptor. It's such a weird word. But the other thing about it is it
smells like roast beef.
Slightly of roast beef.
Okay, you are going to say that. I thought you were going to say something else.
No, that's just weird.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
That's the thing where it's very, very. It's one of those things where like you get the quirky bit in there, but it's just like it smells faintly of roast beef. It's like. Great.
Yeah. Otherwise, it is imbued with an enchantment which excites and synergizes magicka around it and can produce dramatic results when held by certain people. And Sheogorath is fond of forcing mortals to use this as a weapon, in which it cases the wielder with Fork's wound, which is like a debuff.
And you get goosebumps apparently by using it because that's where it earned its name, I suppose. I mean, the static charge kind of makes sense with that, but it's such a weird thing. It's also very interesting for a super tangential thing. It's a card in Elder Scrolls Legends too that's super unique because when you use it, you actually fork a different card to make the card do something different. I believe it knocks like 2 damage off the card in Legends or whatever. But like for the animation, it literally just forks the screen, like a fork just stabs that card. It's super unique animation to just the Fork of Horpellation.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that stuff. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. So otherwise, there's a bunch of other kind of just like a wand and a glove and regalia, like an outfit.
Yeah. Gamble Putty is just a weird name. I never really found it. It's just an ambiguous glove. It's like that. A lot of his things are really not super useful. But
the ones that we pointed out are clearly the best ones. The other thing that we haven't mentioned is that when you are planning to meet Sheogorath, when he doesn't just show up in the world under the guise of some other crazy name, which happens fairly regularly, and he's just not bored and wants to just like kind of play pranks on somebody. If you have to go petition him, typically you have to go through his manservant. Should we call him a manservant?
That sounds fine.
His manservant. And
actually, for a quick aside, just on the idea of manservant being what we call it, I know you played Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Yes.
This just for some reason made me think of the exact quote where somebody's like, "Oh no, it's a female bandit," and she's like, "It's just bandit, you chauvinistic asshole."
Right. Yes, I remember that. Yes.
Thinking of it's like, why are we calling him a man? You could just be a servant.
He's just a servant, but I always assumed that manservant meant like a servant to a man.
I guess.
Rather than a male servant.
Sure.
Like if you were the lord of the house, then you would have a manservant as opposed to a woman servant. I don't know if that's a thing. A lady
something. I don't know if there's a distinguishing factor to that.
Somebody who knows what you need as a man rather than as I don't know. Anyway, Haskell is his name, and he looks, at least in the newer versions of Elder Scrolls, like a human, a mannish character, and the first voice you heard was Haskell welcoming us to the Shivering Isles, and you get to interact with him a bit in that expansion, but he shows up in some other places as well. And It seems like he's just some guy who works for Sheogorath. We don't know much about him. Like, if you dig into any of the wikis, if you dig into any of the dialogue, any of that stuff, nothing tells us about his origin, how he came to work for Sheogorath, why he appears to be kind of ageless and existing forever.
Yeah, he also seems moderately just like, I'm tired from my job. Please just let's get on with this.
Right.
Like, this is just what I have to do. Can we just move this along? Like,
yeah, it's almost like
every time you talk to him.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, haha, okay, yeah, the joke, I get the joke of like.
Yeah, it's very funny. Now please go and go into the cheesemonger's hollow or get disemboweled or whatever you're going to do
just do your thing. I've already seen it all, whatever. That kind of, he's got that kind of attitude. But this is what I also find really interesting about him is that we have concept art for many of these games dating back very early, and there is some early concept art of Sheogorath. I'm going to put it on the screen right now, and Haskell. I believe that must be Haskell because it is a servant at Sheogorath's side who is holding a tray with a beverage on it and a cup, a chalice of some sort. And this Haskell in this picture is clearly not a human. He looks like a little melting monster of some sort. And when I showed this to Lotus earlier, Lotus was like, "Oh yeah, I know what that is."
Yeah, he's a Grummite.
He's a Grummite. Haskell originally was at least designed in concept art to be a Grummite, which is a fish. It's almost like a fish person. And you find them in the Shivering Isles. In fact, there's variations on them that are, some of them are more human-like, and some of them are more like frog, lizard, fish thing that crawled out of the ocean with the same exact face.
Yeah. Yep. And they're very, it's a very unique enemy to the Shivering Isles. So
yeah, I
wonder if the original concept art of Haskell, when they were like, let's humanize him more. And they're like, well, what do we do with this? Or again, did he get warped over time?
Maybe he was the best of the Grummites, the most valuable servant in the Shivering Isles that started as a fish man.
Classic Grummite Haskell.
Yeah, and then Sheogorath was like, that won't do, and decides to like magic him into making look more like a regular mortal.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be the person dealing with regular mortals.
I'm not going to lie. I think I'd like Haskell more if he was a Grummite still.
I don't mean...
That concept art is really neat. It's just weird.
Bethesda, Elder Scrolls 6. I know you guys are starting to work on it. Can we have a Grummite Haskell?
Grummite Haskell.
I want a Grummite Haskell.
Start a petition. Grummite Haskell for the win.
Grummite Haskell. We need him. We need him. Yep. So yeah, there's that. That is one thing I definitely wanted to cover before we get to the end of the show. But then there's also the whole detail about voice actors. We know Wes Johnson. Wes Johnson is a very popular voice actor. He's done many different characters. He guested on our show. He's the voice of Hermaeus Mora as well. A number of other characters. Many of the guards in Oblivion. Every other character in Oblivion. Yes. Every other character at all in Oblivion is Wes Johnson. But in ESO, Sheogorath is done by JB Blanc. Blanc? I think it's Blanc. His last name?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is hard to find because in his IMDb, he's just listed as other voices in ESO. It doesn't actually list Sheogorath. But he is a voice actor who has done many different things. Name a video game, he's probably done a voice. World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, a lot of these big games, Fallout 76, Spyro, the Reignited trilogy. Everybody loves Spyro the Dragon, right? The Harry Potter games, Mortal Kombat, Scooby-Doo. He was in the Scooby-Doo TV series at one point. Lots of different characters and also voices and other characters on TV shows and things like that. So he's fairly predominant,
accomplished voice actor.
Yeah, extremely accomplished. So Wes Johnson and both Wes Johnson and JB Blanc both have done this character, and I think it is
interesting though that since Wes Johnson originally kind of like in our interview with him talked about, him sculpting the dialogue style and all of that, that stayed even in the situations where it isn't him.
Yeah. Yeah. At least that became the goal. He helped form the character.
He formed that character. So it's like, that's kind of became it's a little more synonymous with Wes Johnson, in my opinion, where it's just like that was the character he kind of created out of the information they gave him.
Right.
And it seems like in the case that anybody else were to do that character, they need to mimic him as opposed to make the character their own.
Right. But, well, here's the thing. Here's the last thing I wanted to share on this episode. Before we had Wes Johnson in Oblivion doing this character, we had the character in Morrowind. And
yes.
I don't know the voice. I couldn't find the voice actor for Morrowind. I'm sure if I dig a little bit more, eventually I can dig it up. So if you know who the voice actor is, tell us. We'll call it out in a future episode. But this is what Sheogorath originally sounded like in the first game of the series that had, well, I guess there was Redguard had voices in it too.
Yeah, and I mean, so did Battlespire, but it was definitely much more limited. Mainline voice acting.
Yes. So in the first appearance of a voiced Sheogorath, this is what it sounds like. Here you go. Enjoy. Oh, wait. I got to turn the sound up. Hold on. All right. Here. This is it.
I see you have completed my little errand. Well done. Perhaps you've gotten a taste of madness as well? Do not believe madness to be a curse, mortal. For some, it is the greatest of blessings. A bitter mercy, perhaps, but mercy nonetheless. Give me the fork of Horpellation. I believe I have something more suitable for your needs. Go now. Remember what you have seen.
It's so proper. It's so.
Well, first of all, you told me to enjoy, and I did not.
It's almost creepy because it's not creepy.
So it's weird because, like, I actually remember that quest from Morrowind specifically because I actually didn't want to give back the Fork of Horpellation. I was like, it's mine, because I didn't understand anything about the series at the time. I was like, I want the fork. But the all of the Daedric Princes that we reference that have like voiceover in Morrowind, they all sound oddly similar. It's kind
of
like
little echoey
weird
room thing.
I was going to say, it's very like, you know, they do the voice overlays for different situations and stuff like that. And, you know, their power levels and all sorts of weird effects and stuff like that. And all of the Daedric Princes, for the most part, it's like, okay, here's a very large, thin hallway with nothing in it.
Right.
Here's a microphone. You're a Daedric Prince. Now
Go in the bathroom and record this on a laptop.
Right. It's like they're all very, very samey sounding. Right. And they hadn't really found their voices to make them much, much more individual. They were just kind of a flat, like, yep, super being or something, whatever. Moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. So we get a lot more of that with Wes Johnson's interpretation in Oblivion. Oh, yeah. But there's something about this, the way this voice sounds like.
Use the fork wisely, mortal.
Like, what? Use the fork wisely.
Yeah.
They have to realize that was a quote that sounded like Star Wars, right? Oh, yeah.
Luke. Let me put
Use the fork
back
mortal.
Yeah. Like what? It does actually. Now that you say it.
I mean, it almost sounds like what's his face? Obi-Wan.
It's like a parody of that. And it's just like, all I picture is like an investment banker, like taking this smelly fork and like putting it in his breast pocket and like putting it next to his like pocket watch. And I'm like, this is a weird visual for a Daedric Prince of Madness.
Yeah. I mean, because it is a smelly fork. And here's one more.
What is it, mortal? Have you come to be of service to Sheogorath?
Sheogorath? Yeah, they even pronounce the name differently.
Also, we're not going to give you a pronunciation guide.
Right. Yeah, I love this stuff. I mean, we love this series, and we love how much it has evolved. And clearly, when you're working for years to get one of these games out, some things require more focus than other things in order to just get the game done. So, yeah, and as time went on, they focused more on this kind of stuff. Yeah, Sheogorath.
It almost sounds like the last boss of Quake. But it's interesting, as this is definitely a character who has evolved quite a bit into a very, very unique character to the series. Whereas before, it really wasn't all that unique. Simple things, because one of the only other things, it's just cosmetic stuff and fluff, but one of the things that I did want to specifically mention, just because, we had talked about the Shivering Isles, and that was really where we got our first deep dive into Sheogorath, was when you talk to Haskell, and he is basically like, okay, cool, you're here, the Shivering Isles. No door opens up so much as the room dissolves into purple butterflies that just unwrap around you, and all of a sudden you're out in the field or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the visual uniqueness came along with that character as well. And it's like that kind of started to form on an idea into like the full thing. And again, he's not really my favorite Daedric Prince. He's a little cornball type of thing, but I think it's a great addition to the series. But like, a lot of people like love Sheogorath, absolutely their favorite character between the Skooma Cat and all that stuff, and I totally get it. But it's just the big thing I love about this character is how much it adds to the series in terms of uniqueness. Like when you think of something like this, it's wholly unique to like the Elder Scrolls when you think of that. It doesn't really fit in other stuff.
Yeah, it raises a question in my mind. We just talked about some of the lesser known Daedra. And clearly Sheogorath is one of the more known Daedra because he just likes to get in other people's business and do stuff.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we couldn't see in something like an Elder Scrolls 6 an upgrade in a way in how they represent these other Daedric princes and their personalities that really make them stand out. Because clearly Sheogorath is one of the ones that's most fleshed out and most memorable. But what about Sanguine? Like, he's a really interesting character as well, and we just get kind of this Daedra looking dude who happens to wear red or disguise himself as somebody. Like there are things that they could do to, make that jump, that Morrowind to Oblivion jump, and maybe do that with some of these other characters.
I would like that too. Especially because like one of the things that I actually feel to your point, because that is done, is there was some also in Oblivion that, the main antagonist of Oblivion was actually Mehrunes Dagon.
Right.
And you got more of Dagon, but I actually feel that ESO finished fleshing that out.
Oh yeah.
Like that's just it. There's been a little more flair added to Sheogorath, but like Sheogorath is pretty fleshed out. Hermaeus Mora is really like pretty fleshed out.
Right. Well, he also had an whole DLC.
Correct.
Right.
It really comes like the Daedric Princes that get these expansions really seem like you get a deep dive into a lot of the stuff with them, which I love. And I hope they kind of keep going with something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can see that continuing to be a thing for ESO.
For sure.
But I also think that when you have a mainline game like Elder Scrolls 6, like that is an opportunity to the mainline games kind of set the pace, and then ESO follows through and matches that, right? And then they just kind of they take what has been established and they expand on it in ways, but they are clearly not Todd Howard and the main team going, okay, how do we now dial this up to 11 again and move it to this other thing? And then ESO is going to catch up to that again, right? Like that I feel like that's the way the series works, or at least will, now that we're in a post ESO first game coming up. So
exactly. It'll
be interesting to see. I think we're going to see a lot of things. I think we're going to see a lot of things in Starfield that blow our minds because they've been working on this and it is Todd's baby. And then all the things that they learned from Starfield working into Elder Scrolls 6, I think, are again going to just they have Skyrim to live up to, right? And they do that throughout their games. It's why I love both Fallout and Elder Scrolls, because I notice that you see the structural bones of a concept in one of the games as like there's the game and then there's this little extra thing, and then the next game it's like, oh, that's now a major feature, and you see this other little idea of a thing along with all that's in the game, and then the next game you get that was fully realized and you've got another little thing. It was like, because we got the Homestead expansion with Skyrim, for example, and it was like, oh yeah, you can get a plot of land and you can and it's like by the time we got Fallout 4, it's like full on creation thing. You're building like cities and stuff, like it's ramping
each
it up.
one Right, exactly. And it's like they go a little more into each other each time, and I really like that.
Yeah, and Rob the Princess says, I'd love to see Clavicus Vile or Sanguine get the villainous spotlight. I would also, and I think to add on top of that, to not only see a villain play the villain in a way that we've never seen before, but also, I mean, you have, the Daedric Princes are so on their own terms and have their own goals, like we talked about. The idea of having some of them even cooperate with the protagonist and be the good guy for just whatever happens to be going on, you know, like playing those roles. And that happens from time to time in the series, in ESO or in the history of the world and those kinds of things. And I think that also is an opportunity to flesh somebody out. So like, what if Sanguine is actually helping the protagonist? And so that means we spend more time with them, and we also get to know more about them, their realm, all of that kind of stuff. Like there's so much that can be done, not just by pitting Daedric Princes as villains or main villains, but simply by including them more often.
Sure.
So, yeah. So anyway, I'm sure we're going to get lots of cool stuff once we get around to Elder Scrolls 6. It's going to be a few years, but
yeah, you know, hopefully it'll be around the time I'm retiring, so I'll have time to play it.
Are you retiring early? I hope you've set up your finances and you're like, yeah, 2 more years and I'm done. I'm retired.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
I feel like I'm being realistic on the time period.
Oh, okay. All right.
Wamp, wamp.
Wow. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you for being here, chat. Always love to see all the conversations in the live chat. And Lotus, you've got Tales of Tamriel. Anything else you want to share? Anything going on?
No, I was going to say, ideally all will go according to plan, and we'll be able to record Tales tomorrow evening. We're like, in a weird, like we had one midweek, so we're kind of like an off schedule. So we're trying out our new schedule stuff, but also because of the release cadence of stuff, we've kind of needed to schedule stuff a little oddly for Tales of Tamriel, just because like there's been ESO Lives talking about the next expansion already and stuff like that. So we're trying to fit it in as best we can around all the reveals for stuff. So yeah, as we get more, it'll be interesting to see what we get for Q4 with Elder Scrolls Online. And other than that, no, I'm hoping I've I finished my new setup with my gaming room that I posted some stuff of, which I'm very pleased with.
You got lights behind you.
I do. I have flashy lights like you now, and they're all finalized. So, you know, I'm pretty happy with that. And I would like to get back to recording some more stuff for everybody, because I recently had some people say that people were complaining that they don't actually get to see the stories in the Elder Scrolls Online, which we've had friends of the show tell us that all the time. And recently I had some more than one person show up and be like, oh, I found these like Dungeon Tale videos, which I always credit. It's like, I appreciate you giving me like my title screen art for it.
Yeah.
And what do you call it? The apparently people have been finding us on Reddit because it was getting passed around. It was, how do you get the stories? And somebody was like, oh, this Lotus of Doom guy has them on his YouTube.
just go watch him play through.
They're being useful. But so I would like to get more of those for people, because people have reached out. I've been super busy, so I've been behind on videos. We've got, I don't know, a bunch up, but I want to get all of the dungeons and then the trials for people. And I was going to say, as T-Rex brought up in chat, I do want to stream, because I really want to. Daggerfall just had its 25th anniversary.
Oh, you're going to do
Daggerfall is next on the list based on the vote.
Are you going to do the Unity? What was it? The Unity update?
So I'm going to try both.
It's pretty cool. I've installed it and played around with it a little bit. It works great.
I kind of want to try the original, and then everybody's like, it's so close to the original, except that it just works better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'll probably just take a quick look at the OG. And then if Daggerfall's basically just the same thing except more functional, we'll go through on Daggerfall, I guess. So I'm very excited to start that, but I want to make sure that everybody can see it as I go through the classic ones. So I need to be able to block out time for people so that you can play through. So
yeah, awesome. Yeah, we'll go definitely check that out when Lotus is doing that, and follow his Twitch channel, Lotus of Doom on Twitch, and Lotus of Doom on YouTube for all those videos.
Surprisingly easy to get with them actually giving me my name at places.
It's amazing. It's
amazing when you can just cross brand.
Yeah, some places I have to be robots_radio because for some reason that's taken.
Took me 3 years to get Lotus of Doom on Twitch.
That's so weird. So weird.
I was Lotus OD and nobody was Lotus of Doom. They just said, no, you can't have it either. I was like, what? Why?
Why? Yeah. And this was before I was anybody. Nobody knew who I was. And yet some of these names were already taken. But anyway, come hang out with me. I'm trying to stream weekly on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons on twitch.tv/robotsradio. And of course, you can check out all the different shows at robotsradio.net. So all sorts of stuff there. Thank you again for being here, everybody. We love to hang out with you guys. You guys are the best. All right. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter at robots_radio or Lotus of Doom at Lotus of Doom. Also, you can join us on the Robots Radio Discord channel. You can easily just search Robots Radio Discord on Google or check the description underneath the podcast. Also, this podcast is recorded live every week on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Robots Radio channels on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So just search Robots Radio on any of those platforms. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you while we record the show, or before or after. Either way, just come hang out with us. And if you're looking for more information about my shows and the shows on the Robots Radio Network, go to robotsradio.net for all the information about all the shows on the network, including the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where I help both new and existing podcasters to grow their shows, build their audiences, and create the best podcasts they possibly can. All of that at robotsradio.net. We'll see you next time.